Well, here we are. It has been a long time coming. Back in August, we sat here as a podcast group and talked about how we thought the regular season would go, who we thought was going to make the Super Bowl, all those fun things, all the things that we all love to talk about on this show and you like to talk about at home. And finally, we're here. 60 minutes away from Championship Sunday of the NFL. We had a local team in it, in case you've been living under a rock for the last little while. Welcome, everybody, into a special edition of the Gem City Sports Podcast. As always, it's brought to you by our friends at Rebish Investments. They keep financial guidance simple. If you want more info, simply go to the website, www.rebishinvestments.com, or you can call 814-734-3433. Again, 814-734-3433 if you want to learn more. Special episode today in preparation for the AFC and NFC Championship. We're across this episode going to preview the championship games, specifically Bills and Chiefs, of course, because so many of you are interested in that. And we're going to predict who we think is making it. Is it Patrick Mahomes beating Josh Allen for the fourth straight time in the postseason, or will the Bills finally conquer the Chiefs summit and make their first Super Bowl in decades and overtaken the one team that's been their bugaboo since Josh Allen entered the league? Coach Wayne Bradford, Jonathan Williams joining me on this Sunday. They're gracious enough to take some of their time before they sit down and watch football. Guys, this is just an exciting day. And it stinks in a way that we're waiting until 3 o'clock for these games, but at the same time, it just builds the anticipation, does it not?
Certainly does.
Yeah, definitely. You're normally mid first game by now and at halftime. But no, it's definitely fun to kind of sit around and wait on it. It makes it a bigger game. It makes it feel more special.
Yeah, by this point, I would be either taking a halftime nap or so in a food coma that I wouldn't really know what to do. That's where we're kind of at right now. But hey, it's good. It means we get to bring this to you. And again, thanks everyone for joining us on this Sunday. We know we've got games at 3 o'clock, so we'll try to keep this brief, but an exciting episode nonetheless. Let's start, of course, with the AFC Championship game that comes up at 6:30. Bills fans, let us know in the comments how you feeling. How are things going for you at 2 p.m. ahead of game time? Are you in Kansas City? Are you watching from Orchard Park? Are you watching from home? Take us through in the comments where exactly you're feeling right now at 2 o'clock. Also, by the way, we had a poll question that was going, who people think is going to win the AFC Championship game that we posted a bit earlier. A few votes coming in right now. It's Bills 60-40 over the Chiefs. So the Gem City sports fan population's rolling with the Bills. We're going to get to the picks a little bit later. But I want to start with this, and I'll start with you on this, Coach, because, the storylines you could make out to be anything, right? It could be Allen Mahomes. You could talk about the Bills' playoff failure against Kansas City, the Chiefs going for a three-peat, the Chiefs getting, helped by the officials, however you want to say it. When you look at this game today, if the Bills are going to win, what's the first thing that they have to do? Is there a non-negotiable for Buffalo as they come into this game that absolutely has to happen?
Yeah, they have to, run the football and defend the run, so I think, on both sides. So that's the key. Take the quarterbacks out.
Get out of my head, Coach.
Do what they did against Baltimore last week. If you're +3 and run the football and defend the run, you're going to New Orleans.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of along the same wavelength. I feel like it's going to be a big James Cook day. It should be a big James Cook day. You've got a Chiefs defense who let Joe Mixon crease him for about, 80 yards or 80 or so yards last week. And that's Joe Mixon, who hasn't really had that many big performances like that over the course of the season. And they just kind of haven't looked great run defense wise in their last 3 or 4 games. I feel like it's a big opportunity to establish the run early, get James Cook involved, get him going early. And like I talked to you about on Thursday, Isaac, that takes pressure off of Josh Allen and makes him have to do a lot less to win this football game.
I want to look at this game from 2 angles, and we'll start with when the Bills have the football, because I think that really, for me, is going to be the most intriguing thing as to what Joe Brady, by the way, newly renowned, consistent offensive coordinator Joe Brady, who said he's staying with the team and not going to accept any head coaching gigs earlier in the week. So he's got a lot of thought process now into how he can help this team for the future. But, as much as Jonathan, we talked about this on Thursday, as we mentioned, but I look at this game and as much as I understand you want to run the football for the Bills, I look at the Chiefs defense and I think, okay, they ended the season 8th in the NFL in rush yards allowed per game. They did not allow, for the most part, down the stretch of the season, teams to really run the ball with consistency. It was the quarterback play, and we saw that in the playoff game against Houston. We saw that in the playoff game, or not the playoff game, but late in the regular season when they continued to win games, specifically against Pittsburgh. And I think to myself, I'm like, if I'm the Bills, all season long, you have gotten to this point by letting your quarterback make his own decisions and make big plays in big games. So I guess from an offensive play calling perspective, is Joe Brady going to want to run the football against a team that focuses itself so well against the run on a consistent basis? I'm just concerned that if Buffalo goes into this game saying, we're going to try to limit Josh, we don't want to run that much, don't want to throw that much, that you're playing into Kansas City's defensive hands. Are you not?
Well, I don't think either one of us said don't let Josh Allen do his thing, right?
But I think I don't know if run first is necessarily the way that you're able to win this game, right?
Well, I think if you look at the way that Houston ran the ball, controlled the clock, and played defense, why can't you use that strategy? And you have a better probably all around football team, right? So you take out a couple special teams plays, and Houston probably wins that game handily. Obviously, Houston's defense handled Kansas City's offense outside of a couple, to me, mysterious third down pass, roughing the passer calls. But defensively, they got off the field. They did all they needed to do. And they ran the football and play actioned. If you do not establish the run game and you allow Spagnuolo to line those two guys up in the A-gap and pressure, all right, there you create sacks, there you create negative yards, there you create turnovers. The Bills have 0 turnovers and lead the league in takeaways. That's how you win in the playoffs, and that's just something I believe in.
And for me, establishing the run game doesn't not include Josh Allen in that factor. You have to lean on Josh Allen's legs just as much, in my opinion, as you go to James Cook. Q design runs, quarterback power, and they do a good job of getting Josh Allen involved, especially in short yardage run game. I feel like that's going to be something that's huge too. It's not necessarily just, hand the ball to James Cook or hand the ball to Ray Davis. I think you got to let Josh run as well and let him create plays with his legs. And I feel like it'll open up the passing game for him.
The thing that I find so intriguing about this game is, and we haven't brought his name up a lot, of course, because he wasn't with the team this year in the offseason trade, but in the last couple of matchups when they have played, Stephon Diggs has had such a big aura over this game because it was, how can Kansas City in the back end, which has historically been their weakness really since they lost the Honey Badger, and really, again, the case this year, they're 18th in the league in pass defense. You take out Justin Reed, and there's really not a guy in the back four for Kansas City that, for me at least, would scare me. And I wonder, there were a couple times in those games where Buffalo's game plan early on was to get the ball to Diggs, and it didn't work, and you had to go to, you look at the 13-second game, Gabe Davis scores 4 touchdowns, right? There were other games where Buffalo, Kansas City, the Bills had to make adjustments a little bit too late in the game, and I think even in the game last year, that was the case, where they just felt like they were trying to find Diggs maybe a bit too much down the stretch. You think about the overthrow that Allen had to Diggs on a 60-yard bomb that could have given the Bills the lead late in the game. But now for Buffalo, the thing that intrigues me the most is, I agree with you guys, I think the run game is going to be important. But for me with Josh Allen, because I do think you have to take him into context with his legs, when he gets outside of the pocket, I almost feel like this game is different for him than previous games against Kansas City because he hasn't had to try to force the ball to one receiver all year. And that, for me, has really been what's been great about the Bills' offense this season is you look and you say, okay, Khalil Shakir is the team's leading receiver, but he hasn't been tremendous in terms of the stat category. Keon Coleman coming back from injury has been a big option. You've got the two tight ends in Knox and Kincaid, who I think play a big role today. So I think if we're talking storylines offensively, Josh Allen, in my opinion, has a lot less pressure on his shoulders with throwing the football because there's not that guy who you feel like has to be the big-time pass catcher in big-time games. Is that sentiment wrong? Because, again, I wonder if for the Bills, they feel like they can open up the playbook in the passing game a bit more today because they don't have that superstar who's expected to get the football in a game like this.
Well, to me, you can say that, Isaac, but you got, Karlaftis and you got Jones and, those. Do you want to let those guys just tee off on you, right? And they're going to be in a too high shell and they do a great job disguising, so, it's going to be a really interesting matchup. Spagnuolo, is fantastic and very, very good in the playoffs. Year in and year out, you can beat them in the regular season. And then when they get Baltimore in the playoffs and Buffalo in the playoffs, they got something up their sleeve. So it's just going to be really intriguing to see what is the plan defensively from, Spagnuolo. Stay in too high and let him run the football, and not give him anything in the passing game. It's going to be fun to watch.
This can be for both of you. I just want to ask you, Wayne, on that. I think as much as I agree with you, Jones and Karlaftis are two difficult guys to bring down. But I feel like this is a more improved Bills offensive line from years past. Do you still think the matchup for Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown is too big? Because I feel like, the Bills have been able to run the football. We know Allen's Allen, but the offensive line I don't think has gotten enough credit this year. Is this line good enough now this season to be able to hold for more so than they have in previous playoff years against KC? Where do you see that in terms of the battle in the trenches, knowing that offensive line has been one of the best in the league?
Go ahead, Jonathan, if you'd like.
I like the matchup, but, as a defensive lineman, all it takes is one or two times to get home, Like, I like the matchup on a basis where they're better than they have been in years past, and they might be able to hold up better than they have in years past and keep Josh Allen off the ground a little less frequently than they have in years past, but it's still one of those matchups where it's like all it takes is one or two wins and a guy hitting your quarterback and you have serious problems. And it only takes one play where someone's hitting him when he's trying to throw or someone's hitting him when he doesn't have like a firm grip on the ball in the pocket. It's just you want to minimize as many risks as possible in this game. Because you don't want to be in a game where you decide to cut Josh Allen loose and let Josh Allen go back to playing Josh Allen football of years past, and then you lose because of one mistake, whether it be a fumble on a sack in the pocket or a fumble with him doing too much with his legs or him taking a shot downfield, and you lose off of one mistake when you clearly have a good enough football team to get the job done. I just feel like you can't risk that mistake because that's how Kansas City has been winning all season. Is off of another team making that one crucial mistake that it might not be big when it happens, but it comes back to bite you at the end of the game.
And with Kansas City this year, you don't have to score 30 points today to win, I don't think, because Kansas City's not an explosive offense. So we haven't talked about that. It's like this is not the Patrick Mahomes vertical, offense where they're scoring 35, 42. You score in the high teens to the low 20s, you have an opportunity to win. So, that I think alters your offensive game plan too, knowing I don't believe this is a shootout. I just don't think that's the type of game it is. And I don't think Kansas City has the explosiveness to make it a shootout.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the biggest thing for me when Buffalo has the football is going to be late in the game. And we're going to touch on this a little bit later in the show, but Jonathan and I were talking about this on Thursday, is that when Karlaftis or Jones get home, because it's inevitably going to happen, how much do you alter your game plan? Because we have seen in the past with Buffalo, specifically, mostly on defense, but there have been some times in offensive situations too. The second pressure gets to you against this team particularly, Sean McDermott tries to go into a bag of tricks and change things up. I don't think as a whole, if you're the Bills, the one piece of advice that I would have for you today, stick to the game plan. And it's easier said than done. Any other team they play, I think it wouldn't be a problem, right? You give up a sack, it doesn't matter. You move on. But I think against this team in particular, we have seen this Buffalo squad so often against Kansas City just change things because it's the Chiefs, because it's the aura around the team. If you're the offense, to your point, stick to the game plan because it'll help you control the clock too. I think that's another thing for the Bills offense is, whether you want to throw it like I'm suggesting you do or run the football with consistency like the two of you are, you have to win time of possession if you want to win the game if you're the Bills. I don't see them holding the ball for 25 minutes and winning the football game. And I think that's a big part too. So Bills offense, key against Kansas City's defense. We'll see which unit up front, where Wayne's expertise is going to win the game. Because to me, the offensive line for Buffalo against the D-line for KC is fascinating because you can make the argument that these are the two strongest units that have played against each other in a playoff game in Buffalo's O-line, in Kansas City's defensive line. Let's go to the defensive side when Kansas City has the ball, because I think this is where we want to talk about the most of things because, at 15-2, to Wayne's point, the Chiefs' offense has not been a juggernaut. But let me read out these stats for Patrick Mahomes in 3 playoff games against the Bills, in which he's 3-0. In those 3 games, he's throwing 9 touchdowns. He's averaging 35.5 points per game, over 300 passing yards, and a completion rate north of 75%. Start with you on this, Jonathan, because you're the guy in the secondary that probably has had to key on big matchups in the past. Obviously, priority number 1 has to be Travis Kelce. Is there a game plan you can put together if you're Bobby Babich to try to stop him, number 1? And if so, what does that game plan look like? Because so far in the postseason, no one's been able to stop him ever.
You have to hit him every play. Like Travis Kelce is the type of guy. He's a tight end, but he catches passes like a receiver. He runs routes like a receiver, and he kind of has a tad bit of a receiver's mindset in which Travis Kelce doesn't like being hit when he's running routes. He doesn't like really super physical contact when he's running routes. You have to agitate a guy like Travis Kelce. If you let him get off the ball cleanly and just kind of find open space, he's going to kill you every time. And him and Patrick Mahomes have such a connection. If Pat ever gets outside of the pocket, it's like Travis knows exactly where to go and Pat knows exactly where to look to find him. So you have to be able to disrupt timing with a guy like Travis Kelce. You cannot let him get to his spots in time and in rhythm with Pat Mahomes, because they will pick you apart in their 2-man game over and over again for the entire game.
Wayne, in your experience with Coach Babich, because of course, you know him, you've been around him, you see his coaching. Whether it's Travis or whether it's this passing game, does he have the formula in your mind based on what Bobby is used to be able to contain KC? We saw it in spurts in the regular season. I'm just curious to get your perspective from what you think Bobby Babich might strategize tonight.
Yeah, I think the key is, Kansas City, Tooney out there at tackle got abused last week, right? So you got to put number 1, your best pass rusher over there on Tooney. And can he get home and can he make some disruptions, the way that the Texans did last week? And then secondly, to me, just what Jonathan said, you've got to, every time that you have an opportunity to press, Kelce, I think you've got to press him and you've got to be in that 5-yard zone. It's amazing to me that nobody Belichick's anymore, right? Belichick always took the number 1 threat away. They played the underfront where the Sam was on the line of scrimmage in a 9 technique. Never let that tight end off the line. Now, Kansas City does a great job of flexing, Kelce and getting him off. But, I'd put a guy up there and I'd press him, kind of play boxing 1, a 1-star. Sometimes you call it where you double them. I don't know why we haven't seen anybody in recent memory take the best guy away, right? So it'd be great to be able to do that with wrap out. What does that mean to Buffalo's secondary? Milano's probably okay to play him underneath and beat him up a little bit, but then you take him out of the run game. So what is your strategy there, and who's going to do that? DeMar Hamlin, not a very big guy, but been a very physical guy, and could be somebody you just say, hey man, this is your responsibility today. You got him everywhere he goes. I'd love to see someone do some of those things and force him, to find somebody else, to beat you.
I think the first thing that we have to talk about when we talk about Buffalo's defensive strategy is wonder whether Christian Benford can go or not. I think he's the one guy who's still questionable going into this game. The injury report doesn't come out for another couple of hours. I think if he's in, just from my layout of the Bills defense, you feel better about being able to cover the wide receivers man to man. And I think to your point, Wayne, I was going to mention DeMar Hamlin. No one's really talked about how solid he's been this season.
Sure.
And you almost wonder, historically in these games, because of their defensive scheme and whatnot. I think, Wayne, you talked about that Coach Babbage does this to an extent. Buffalo historically is the too high safety team. They don't want, you don't want them to get beat deep. And listen, in previous years, I get it, right? Tyreek Hill on the team, a lot of speedsters and whatnot. Kansas, you have to be wary of that if you're Kansas City. But I think if you're the Bills, this would be a game for me that you bring a guy like Hamlin down, maybe a little bit further from his normal safety spot. Maybe he's the guy that double shadows Kelsey or something like that. This has to be a more aggressive defense. We've seen this season Patrick Mahomes struggle to throw the deep ball. I mean, as much as Xavier Worthy has been the speed demon who's made some big plays, it hasn't been down the field. It's been more sideline routes that he breaks free. So I don't necessarily know if going too high safety in this game is the right move, because I don't know if Kansas City has the personnel to be able to beat you over the top. And even if they do we trust Mahomes, as we've seen him this year not been able to do it, throw the football with consistency down the field? I just feel like if you're the Bills, this is a game where defensively against the KC pass, you be aggressive in the box, because, and this brings me to my next point, regular season meeting between these two teams, Bills limited Kansas City to 2.5 yards on the ground on average per play. I don't know how healthy Pacheco is going to be. Obviously that Kansas City running back room has rotated through a bunch of guys, Kareem Hunt being one of them. But I don't see how, if you're the Bills, you get away with too high safety in this game, knowing that Kansas City's not a deep ball threat.
The too high also, it allows you to be 5 under intermediate, right? To take away the dig, to take away the middle hook where, Kelsey works under and so forth. The question is, are you a Tampa 2 team where you're getting that guy to the middle of the field? I don't think you need to be a Tampa 2 team, deep drop that middle linebacker, because that's where Kelsey makes all his, living with the under routes and the mesh and so forth. So, too high, I think you can play some man under too deep. Play him hard underneath with double over the top and make Mahomes run the football. And you know what? Hit him when he slides and take the penalty today. I'm not saying be dirty, but if I'm Buffalo and I'm near him, I'm taking a shot and I'm living with the penalty because I'm getting it anyway. I'm not hesitating. I know I'm going to get the call, so I'm taking advantage of it, and I'm going to make it count. And again, I'm not condoning to be dirty or anything like that, but if you got a chance to get him on the ground, and if they call a penalty on you, so what? Make him pay for it.
Well, you make a good point, Wayne, because I think all the way back to 2018, right, when KC's in their first AFC Championship game, they're playing New England. What did the Patriots do early? Well, they attacked Mahomes, right? They put 5-6 guys in the box. They didn't necessarily get to him. I don't know how many sacks they had in the game, but you keep knocking him down. You keep making it difficult for him to live in the pocket. We saw in the Super Bowl a few years back against Tampa Bay. The second you get pressure on Mahomes or any quarterback, no one can stand up forever for 60 minutes if you're getting pressure on the quarterback. And I think, too, to me, the other formula of this, if you're the Bills, is I want to see a lot more Von Miller. I want to see a lot more heavy set on the down linemen. Because to your point, Wayne, if Buffalo can get pressure on KC early in this game and stop the run, that to me was the defining factor in last year's playoff game, as Pacheco ran wild. And that eventually opened up Kelsey in the second half. You stop the run, you force Mahomes back in the pocket and make it so that he can't run out of the pocket. And I'm with you too, Wayne. You take a penalty early in the game, I don't think that kills you that much. I would be, Jonathan, I don't know what you say in this, but in terms of the pressure situation, I'd be putting Von Miller and a lot of big guys up there in front early in this game.
Because yeah, if you take away the run, now it makes Kansas City have to be one thing, and it allows you the opportunity to kind of pin your ears back, get your best pass rushers in the game, and go get after Mahomes, who doesn't like to be hit. There's a reason why he does all of the things that he does to try to draw. He doesn't like contact. I don't know very many quarterbacks, except for Josh Allen and maybe Jalen Hurts, that do like that contact. He doesn't like taking a lot of shots. And if you get to him early, you get to him often, one thing you're going to do, you speed up his clock when he's in the pocket. So now he's thinking he has to get the ball out quicker, which also helps you because it doesn't allow him to let routes develop down the field and take any deep shots on you. And then 2, you make him scramble around and you move him off his spot where he's more inaccurate with his throws. Yes, Mahomes has a ridiculous ability to create, but he likes to do that on his own will. He likes to do that under his own power. He doesn't like to be forced into doing that and having to escape and having to scramble out of the pocket every single play. Get Mahomes back there running around like a chicken with his head cut off, and you're in a decent spot as a defense because, like you said, and to your point, they don't have the deep threats that they've had in years past where you could just run around and let it fly and somebody come down with it. If you know where Travis Kelce is at and you have Mahomes outside of the pocket, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, to your point earlier, Wayne, I think the stats for me, when I mentioned them for Mahomes in the postseason against Buffalo, I don't think that happens again today. The thing that I would say, and I echo the same sentiment as the offense, if you're Bobby Babich, balls to the wall. Just be aggressive. I think so often in the last 4 years, there have been so many teams in this league, whether it was Houston last week, whether it was, and Wayne, I hate to use this example, but Baltimore in the AFC Championship game last year. So many teams, because it's Kansas City, and this was when New England was in their prime too, get away from their game plan because of the team that they're playing. And really, and lastly, I think the last thing I want to talk about before we pick the game is the coaching matchup. And I just would say this to Sean McDermott. I understand that I'm not, I'm the least conditioned person on this podcast to talk about coaching and strategy. But you've gotten 3 cracks at this Kansas City team in the last few years of your playoffs. At some point, you have to say, screw it, I'm just going to do what I do best, and I'm going to stick to my game plan, and I trust my team. I think last week, we saw really for the first time Sean McDermott trust what he was building throughout the week to work in the game plan. Even when it got dicey in the second half, even when Baltimore started to run the football better on Buffalo, Bills didn't blink. They kept doing what they were doing. They didn't try to go outlandish and go Josh Allen hero ball. You have to do that today if you're Sean McDermott. And I'm just wondering if you guys believe that this is a Sean McDermott now that's capable of sticking to his game plan the whole time, because we haven't seen it yet against KC in the postseason.
I'll take a crack at it. Yeah, I think last week was, to me, very eye-opening because you talk about sticking to the game plan, but altering their game plan to be able to come out and defend Baltimore and do the things they did to them in stopping the run and defend the run and getting over that hurdle, being able to, not be bullied by a bully. So I think the most important thing that came out of winning that game is the mentality that there's no question we can win this week, right? Last week was probably, you're going to laugh, a tougher challenge, at least for their defense. So, being able to, be creative, come up with a game plan, take away what, Baltimore did, Lamar Jackson, I think gives you even more confidence to say, hey, to your point, we're going to do whatever it takes, to win. If that's rushing 3 and dropping 8, let's do it. If that's, rushing 5 and playing man free, let's do it. I think that's really going to be the turning point that people are going to look back on and say that's when they got over the hump.
Yeah, no, I think they're in a good spot, and McDermott is in the spot where he trusts his team and he trusts what he has. Like I said, I'm pretty confident this is probably the best crack that Buffalo is going to have at a Kansas City team. Kansas City, obviously, still the Chiefs, but they're kind of down this year. Offensively, especially, we've been talking about how their offense isn't nearly as explosive as it's been in years past. In years past, you've had to score 30 to 40 points to beat this team, to even be in the game with this team. You don't have to do that this year. So if you can limit them to scoring 21 or less, you give yourself a chance to win this football game where you don't have to do very much. To Wayne's point, you score in the low 20s and can get out of Kansas City with the win. So I feel like McDermott is in a good spot, and this team is in a good spot to actually pull this off. And probably this is the best chance that they're going to have to pull this off in the playoffs against the Pat Mahomes-led Chiefs.
Yeah, biggest thing for me is how many more chances do you get, right? And despite the record, I think we all agreed to Wayne's point. If we're talking specifically about roster talent in the AFC, probably was Baltimore 1. Then you go Buffalo 2, and then Kansas City 3. So I agree. If we're talking pen to paper, this should be an easier matchup for the Bills. It's just now the team that you have to get over. They have been able to beat Baltimore. They've been able to beat Cincinnati to get to the Super Bowl. I think justifiably so, you have to get through the Chiefs, and it's so intriguing that this matchup is again happening today. Before we get to our picks, just want to shout out one more time Rebich Investments, who do a great job with our show. 814-734-3433 is the number to dial. www.rebichinvestments is simply the number to call, the website to go to during normal business hours. Rebich Investments, keeping financial guidance simple. All right, we're going to pick the game now. Finally, we are to Super Bowl doorstep. Before we get to that, though, Nick Artman, not on the show with us, is taking the Kansas City Chiefs to beat the Bills in the AFC Championship game, so he couldn't be with us today but wanted to share his pick. We'll give him his NFC Championship game pick a little bit later as well. Gents, I'm going to ask for a winner and a score as well in this game today, because I think it's only appropriate for all those of you who might be betting specifically on our picks. I don't know why you would do that. We're not worth much money as it is to begin with anyway, but it's fun nonetheless. So Jonathan Williams gets to lead us off in the AFC Championship game. Bills and Chiefs. Is Buffalo, Jonathan, finally going to get over the hump of the Kansas City Chiefs, or is it back to the Super Bowl for a third straight season for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes?
I feel like Buffalo has all of the pieces to get this job done. I feel like Buffalo is in prime position to win this game and finally get over that Patrick Mahomes hump. And somehow I still don't think they're going to do it. I'm going Chiefs. I'm going Chiefs probably 27-24. I don't believe it's going to be a 30 or 40-point shootout type of game. I just feel like Pat Mahomes is going to have a Pat Mahomes drive at the end of a game and get him a field goal late to win it.
Close. That's what everyone said so far. So 2 for the Chiefs. Over to you, Coach Bradford.
I definitely think that this is Buffalo's year. But I think it's going to come down to this. It's going to be Buffalo that makes the huge play in special teams today, not Kansas City. So Kansas City, who's blocked field goals, had long returns. I think Buffalo is going to make a concerted effort, and there's going to be a splash play, whether it's a blocked kick, a punt return, a kickoff return long, that makes the difference. And I'll go, I like these funky scores, right? So I'm going to go 23-21 Buffalo.
Maybe, so that's what, a blocked punt safety or something like that?
Yeah, something in there, a bad snap over the head on the punt for 2, and something like that.
Interception return on a 2-point conversion. Who knows?
There you go.
Yes.
We did see that. What was that? The Chargers and Texans game in the first round, a blocked extra point, go back the other way, and that's a good thing. We talked about offense and defense, but special teams has been always Kansas City dominant, and so can Buffalo potentially get that special teams play? To Wayne's point, if you don't turn the ball over like you did, like Houston did against KC, I think it's all she wrote. I have said all season long that I think Buffalo's got the best chance to go to the Super Bowl out of any year. I love the fact that they got rid of Stephon Diggs early in the season, and I think as you've watched this team this season, the word that struck me is balance. They are very balanced. Their defense has been pretty good overall at stopping the run. And in the past defense, they don't have a stud back there, but they have made it so that you cannot get deep plays on them and chunk plays. And I think Kansas City will struggle that in it today. I think Josh Allen is having a wonderful season. Even if he doesn't win the MVP, it's been his most consistent season with lack of interceptions. I think Buffalo's going to play a near perfect football game. I don't think they're turning the ball over. I think I'm going to agree with Wayne in the fact that they make a big special teams play. And I think that this defense is going to be stout in critical moments. But we saw last week, even playing perfect football doesn't beat the champs. And I have said from the beginning of the season that until they can beat Kansas City in the playoffs, I don't trust Buffalo to pick them. I've also said that the way Buffalo's season is going to end is on an Xavier Worthy walk-off 80-yard touchdown in overtime. So I can't stray from what I've said all year. I'm going to take the Chiefs 31-24 in overtime, and I think you're going to look at the box score at the end of this game and think to yourself, how on earth is Buffalo not in the Super Bowl? I really do. I think they're going to outplay Kansas City basically from whistle to whistle. But this Chiefs team just, for some reason, continues to win football games when they shouldn't. And two-time Super Bowl defending champ with a great head coach and a great quarterback, I think has to be something to said about it. And it would be really awesome, I think, for us locally here to get to see Buffalo in the big game and to see somebody besides the Chiefs. But I just can't take the Bills until I see them win. So I'm going to go Chiefs 31-24 in overtime with Jonathan and with Nick. and maybe that gives Wayne bragging rights by 10 o'clock tonight. We'll have to see. I know he wants to redeem himself from last week. That's for sure.
I was 0-4 last week. I can't believe I got invited back to the show.
You said that back in September when GM lost a football game. I don't know. You're too hard on yourself.
Man.
All right. Hey, let's do some NFC Championship game picks here because we got a game happening in about 25 minutes. Wayne, I'll start with you on this one. If you want to give me a key to this game and who you think the Bills are going to meet in the Super Bowl, Commanders, Eagles, who ends up winning this game and the key for you coming up?
Yeah, in the trenches, very, very intriguing. Just announced that Juergens, the center for Philly's not playing.
Yeah.
Right? Got a bad back. So they're moving, the guard over to center. But the guard is, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but All-American from Alabama at center. So, but it's a different center. And then you got Jalen. There's no way he's 100%. So those are two things there. And then Cosme, the guard for Washington, blew his knee out last week, so he's not playing. So who's going to be against Jalen Carter, right? So it's really up there in front on both sides is going to be very, very challenging for either team. The big thing for me is Coach Quinn and Washington has the most snaps of nickel against 12 and 21. I think Dan has to go big this week. He's got to go Legion of Boom, under front, 8-man front. And to me, you absolutely must make Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown beat you. You cannot let Saquon beat you. He may still, but if it takes lining up with 12 or sneaking a 12th guy on there, you can't let them run the football. So, who's going to control the line of scrimmage and defend the run? I am going to pick Washington because Washington, up until this point, we picked Buffalo today, is the only playoff team that has won on the road, and they've won twice. So they're going to win 3 times on the road. So it's going to be a Commander Buffalo Bill repeat from the late 80s, and hopefully it comes down to a better game than they played those years.
America is praying that Wayne Bradford's predictions come to life today because that's the Super Bowl that everybody except those in Kansas City want. Jonathan Williams, who's going to face the Chiefs on your prediction in the NFC Championship game?
For me, I'm going Philly. I think for me, the key is keeping Jaden Daniels in the pocket. Jaden Daniels has shown an ability to run the football and pick up crucial first downs in situations where you don't think they really have any other options. Their running backs, Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler, are serviceable, but aren't great running backs, aren't guys that they're going to lean really heavily on to carry the load on the ground. So Jaden Daniels is kind of taking that upon himself. If you can keep him in the pocket, if you can keep him from running the football and creating plays with his legs, I feel like you have a really good chance of stopping this Washington offense, who really doesn't have much outside of Terry McLaurin to throw the football. De'Ami Brown has come on as of late and has some productive games, but De'Ami Brown for me is like a number 3 receiver. He's not a number 2 yet. He's not as consistent as a receiver for me, in my opinion, and I don't think it's going to be very hard to stop them if you make them be one-dimensional.
Tell you what, last week I picked the Commanders over the Lions because I looked at 2 things. I looked at coach and I looked at quarterback, and I said, okay, I think Dan Quinn's more experienced, smarter, less likely to make errors than Dan Campbell. That came to pass. Jaden Daniels, I thought, was a more talented, polished quarterback, even as a rookie, than Jared Goff. And we saw Goff go absolute awful mode in that game, and Washington ended up coming away with the win. I'm going to put the same exercise to the task in this game. Coach, Dan Quinn, again, more experienced, more fundamentally sound. I think Nick Sirianni can be a bit erratic. And whether you call this a fluke or not, I mean, Jaden Daniels might be a top 5 quarterback in football now. He is a smart guy. Doesn't make the big mistake. I think Philadelphia's defense will test him here, but I'm gonna go to a point that you two made with the Bills and Chiefs. I don't think Washington has to score more than 17 to 20 points to win this game themselves. Philadelphia's offense is Saquon Barkley dependent. It has been Jalen Hurts really struggling to the finish line. So I'm going to take the Commanders to win this game with Wayne. I just think that when you look at the way that these roster makeups are, I think Philadelphia has a lot of talent, but the offense hasn't been able to figure it out. And I think Washington defense is going to be enough to hold them to 16, 17 points. And then give me Jaden Daniels. He hasn't shown anything in terms of mess ups in the postseason or anything that would indicate that he's going to do it now. So I hope the Commanders get there. It'd be a really great story. I think Philadelphia is a really talented team, but the coaching just concerns me. So I'll go Chiefs Commanders in the Super Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks. So there you have it. We are a couple of minutes away from Championship Sunday, one of the most exciting Sundays of the year, guys. And I'll tell you what, I think one way or another, both these games will be good. And I think that's the thing that maybe in years past hasn't necessarily been the case. Is, even last year, Wayne, with Chiefs and Ravens, it just never seemed like Baltimore was really in the game. I don't think you're going to see that this year. I think both these games are going to come down to the wire.
Yeah, I think so. And again, the real intriguing one in Philadelphia and Washington is Vic Fangio versus Cliff Kingsbury. Kingsbury brought out the old Texas Tech run and shoot air raid last week, and really, I thought, caught Detroit off guard. Wide bunch sets. All evening, Detroit had one or two guys out there, throw the bubble all night. They had no answer. So what can Cliff Kingsbury draw up schematically, and can he cut it loose like he's at Texas Tech back in the Big 12 where you had to score 60 to win? That'll be very interesting to see how a more established Vic Fangio system guy can line up to those things.
Yeah, because, going that route creates matchup problems and creates numbers issues, especially on the outside, where if you get outnumbered, you have no extra defender to come up and make a tackle on a bubble or a screen or anything like that. So it is going to be interesting to see kind of what Philadelphia does to kind of counteract that. It's something that they showed on film last week, so it's something that you would assume that they've prepared for and kind of have a check to go to if they come out in one of those sets. But for me, yes, Philly's offense hasn't looked great. I feel like you see a lot more of Jalen Hurts' arm today than you've seen in recent memory and in recent weeks, because I feel like you're going to have to. Obviously, you have a Washington defense that's going to sell out to stop Saquon Barkley. It's going to land on Jalen Hurts' shoulders to make a couple throws. You're going to have to get A.J. Brown more involved than you have in the last 3 weeks of the season, because he's been virtually non-existent as of late. You're going to have to get him involved. You're going to have to find a way to get Devonta Smith the ball, and it's going to rest on Jalen Hurts' arm. I've seen Jalen Hurts have explosive games in the passing game before, when the game is on the line and when the season is on the line and you need him to throw the football. I've seen him do it in the past, so I'm rocking with him to do it here.
Going to be a fun Sunday, and hopefully we got a chance to get your pregame show started off right. Enjoy the games, everybody. Hopefully your team wins. If you're a Bills fan, we're all hoping and praying for you. None of us are, but we're certainly hoping that your squad makes it to the big game. It would be for some fun content coming up next week. By the way, our next episode, less than 24 hours from now, Flagship City Sports Talk, Monday, 9 a.m. You can watch on any of those platforms below, or you can simply tune in to talkerie.com. We'll recap what's going to be a fun Sunday in championship week. Enjoy the games. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. We'll talk to you all on Monday when they all settle themselves out. Take care.
Take care, everyone.